When we get started, I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. Welcome everybody to Thursday Night Big Book Study Workshop. Joanne must have caught a lot of resentments last week. So.
That's all my fault.
Welcome everybody online. Welcome everybody here. There is a solution. We're going to get right into it. We talked about last week about the first symptom in alcoholism. Then we asked you to do the homework and see if you could locate the second symptom. And they talk about here, we're going to get right into it. At the bottom of page 22, they talk about here, we know while... Go ahead.
So you can finish
Who
your
are
ice
you
cream?
again?
My name's Joanne. I'm also a recovered alcoholic. I'm going to read a little out of the book and give Tony an opportunity to finish his very nutritious dinner.
Dinner. This came from work.
Page 22 at the bottom of the page. We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from drink, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. That's the remix, by the way. We are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens, both in the bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop.
So we know that as the first symptom in alcohol, the allergy, right? We cover that in great detail, right? We understand that. And when we put it into our system, anybody confused about that? Anybody get thirstier when they drink here? And then we found out it wasn't the pretzels, eh? Yeah. Okay.
The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body.
And this is where people read this and they go, oh, this is all the behavioral stuff and all my thinking. That's not it. Remember, there's a different component from the behavioral, the human component, and the illness. Two different things. The doctor made reference to that, right? Bill was of good earning potential, but he was the type of alcoholic he come to regard as hopeless. So there's two different things happening. Anybody ever have that? Like there's your life and your potential and everything that you got going for you, and then there's this problem that seems to be dictating how we govern our lives. Yes? Right, yes. Right room? Okay.
Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. If you ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis.
And why do we offer alibis is because we're trying to make sense of why we continue to do something when we don't want to do it. Like an act against our own will. Anybody find that conversation? Why am I doing this again? Anybody ask you around you, why are you doing this? It's an irritating question, isn't it? I mean... Keep going. The main problem of the alcoholic centers in the mind and same with other people. But that's a different kind of problem they're suffering from, right?
Human condition.
The human condition. Poor parenting. If I was their parent, I'd tell you, no, go ahead.
I mean, but if you want to disrupt something, is that the best you can come up with? I mean, we all did better than that before we got here.
Yeah. Like they're going to shock us what they put on. Oh, my God. Amateurs. Okay.
If you ask him, sorry, we already went over that. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. They sound like the philosophy of the man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so that he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, he will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk.
That's like having a problem with your car and taking a baseball bat to it. Now your car's done, right? It's like, what did you do? Oh, I was teaching it a lesson. Okay.
Once in a while he may tell the truth, and the truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took that first drink than you have. Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts they really do not know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot.
So what's the second symptom in alcoholism referred to in the big book? How do they describe it? They describe it as a malady, a condition that centers where? In the mind. So they're going to explain what they mean by that, right? Because if you were just left with that, you wouldn't understand what they mean by that, right? So we understand the first symptom. Now we're looking at the second symptom, right? So the first symptom's done. right? Because if we never took the drink, we'd never trigger the allergy, right? So why do we keep on doing something when we see it's injurious? Anybody? Because it's problems, health, mental health problems, financial, all that other stuff, right? Okay.
There is the obsession that somehow, someday they will beat the game, but they often suspect they are down for the count.
What's the obsession in regards to?
Fixing self.
Well, at this stage of the game, how many people has tried to really exert themselves to keep themselves sober? How many people come up with a game plan? How many people did a check-in and said, well, I don't think about it anymore, I must be okay?
So is it a response? Yeah. Is it a response to the system or symptom, or is it the symptom itself?
The symptom.
Well, how many of you in this room hear constantly the allergy and the obsession and the allergy and the obsession, right? And I know some of you have been coming to the Big Book study for a long time and understand the difference between the two, but the question is how often are you still hearing that, right? That these are the symptoms of alcoholism, the allergy and the obsession. And that's not what they've just said here, right? What they've said here is that we suffer from a malady that centers in our mind, right? Right? And they use the word obsession as a response to that symptom. Not the idea that they're trying to put forth here is that the inability to leave that drink alone, right, is followed up with this obsession to somehow beat the game, right? The game is now what? To stay away from that first drink, right? But all the information they've just given us here on this page indicates that any kind of attempt we've done so in the past, we've been unable to do so, right? And they're going to elaborate on it in the coming pages.
Yeah, and so what it kind of boils down to is how many people made up their mind not to drink again and then felt good and told everybody how it's different this time, right? And you're convinced it's different this time, and you're trying to convince the people around you it's different this time, but the only people you're not convincing is the people who have recovered from this illness. They realize you're in deep trouble, but you're the only one that don't realize it because you still think it's an idea that you can see, feel, and touch. Right. Then it would be a behavioral problem, right? So if it's the obsession, that's something you could do about it. But if it's something that's happening, well, let's see how they describe it. This is kind of good. Down at the bottom here.
The tragic truth is that if the man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may not arrive. He has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. The tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected.
Every case. So that means you come to a meeting, you're sitting there, you do a self-check-in. I don't feel like drinking. I feel fantastic that I'm not drinking. I must be okay. Right? But they're saying this symptom, this condition has already been present long before you understand it. It's been dictating to you your inability to stay sober, but you still think just because I feel different, that means things are going to be different. Right? But if you suffer from the illness of alcoholism, that means, based on the doctor's opinion, this is coming again. The only one that don't know so is you because you don't understand alcoholism. You're hoping it's a behavioral problem. You're hoping you're one of those people on page 20, giving good reason. Anybody hope they were of that type? Giving good reason, I learned my lesson this time. It's not going to happen again. I can't see it happening again. Well, if you didn't suffer from this illness, then yes, given good reason, you'd be able to stop or quit or moderate, right? Yes? Yeah. But if you're a real alcoholic, they're saying here, we already know you're going to relapse again. You're the only one that don't know it. So we need to help you have a step one experience. That's where they're giving us the outlay of what that looks like, and then they'll give us an example.
The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice and drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable, at certain times, to bring into consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. Who remembers their last relapse here? Who remembers the first drink that instigated the relapse? And how many of you have had experiences prior to that relapse that were awful? And there was the strongest desire to never start again that you could possibly ever conjure, right? There's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of remorse. You remember the second to last hungover morning with all of the damage created from all of the excessive drinking, all of the consequences, right? How many times have you swore you would never do it again? Do you ever find it interesting that in that moment, in that last relapse, you were unable to recall all of that? I mean, we carry it around with us at will, right? You know, self-pity, all that stuff. But in this moment, we are unable to pull it out as a useful tool.
And even if you think about it, it doesn't stop you.
No.
Thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies. Is that where you're going?
Yep.
He has probably placed himself beyond human aid.
What places a person beyond human aid?
Psych ward.
No.
Which symptom?
A lot of people end up in the psych ward that are not alcoholic, right?
Yes.
Like just the human condition itself untreated could put you in the puzzle factory, right? So here they're very specific in regards to the first drink. Yes, the malady.
Yeah.
So when this type of thinking is fully established, they've placed themselves beyond human aid. So once this malady is fully established, that means they're without defense against the first drink. So what places one beyond human aid is this malady, this thing that at certain times they're without defense against that first drink. And what confirms that is our inability to stay sober. We keep relapsing. But we're the only people this thing is different this time. But it's not different this time because the doctor talks about this is repeated over and over. What's repeated over and over?
Malady.
The malady. Exactly. There we go.
Unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history. But for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop but cannot.
So these people don't want to drink. How many people have been there? Sit in a meeting, I'm never drinking again, look how great I'm doing, blah, 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 and then who's coming back again? Anybody? Because you don't understand the illness. But once you start understanding the illness, so the book's going to be lined up in a way to allow you to have a step one experience. You've already had it, but you don't know it yet. So you need to. So we're going from a behavioral problem into an illness, right? The shift in understanding, right? Because it's already present. Whether you agree to it or don't agree to it, it doesn't change anything. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. Then they talk about those who are without defense. Now you may be getting a little depressed, so they said, we better give you a bit of hope here. It's like, oh my God, I'm hoped. They said, well, wait a minute. There is a solution, right? So what step are they going to look at? If step one's the problem, that's what we're looking at, right? Yeah. So what step is the solution? 2. Step 3 is the decision whether I need to carry on with the solution being presented in step 2, yes? Yeah. So there is a solution. What we're going to read now is the outlay of step 2. There you go. Because remember the first portion of the book up to page 44 deals with what 2 steps? 1 and 2 as the reader. But those who have gone through it, they're talking from a place of experience of having done this, is step 12. So this book is really a 12-step call to us, the reader, which is being presented as the solution in step 2. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. When Ebby was talking to Bill, right? Ebby was talking from a place of having experienced this. Bill was learning from a position of understanding this. Does that kind of make sense? Remember, Ebby went through a course of action that he went through. Bill was understanding that as step 2 as the solution to step 1, yes? So we're going to look at what they mean by step 2 now.
Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and the futility of life as we had been living it. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a 4th dimension of existence, of which we had not even dreamed. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences. And you'll notice in your books, there's an asterisk next to spiritual experience. And if you go down to the bottom of the page, it says fully explained in Appendix 2, which is in the back of the book. Which means that at this point, you're not supposed to derive your own meaning of what they mean, right?
And your own understanding.
They are directing you to an appendix at the back of the book to confirm, right? This is what we mean when we refer to a spiritual experience. You're not drawing your own ideas into this. It will never ask you to draw your own ideas into this.
Yeah, what do you think? You won't read that anytime soon. Okay.
What do you think?
What do you think?
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, right.
But interestingly enough, they give us a little bit of a glimpse in this paragraph here, which they say, these spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves.
So is that a collective experience or singular? It's collective. Who's the only one outside of that experience right now?
The reader.
Us, the reader. Right? So they're giving us a glimpse of continue going. This is what we're presenting here. And we're going to show you how to do this because that's the main purpose, is they're going to show us how they recover it. So if you haven't been through this process and you think you've changed, that's a delusional statement, right?
Because what they're describing here in this short paragraph is their experience as a result of this entire psychic change, right? Their statement is that they have a revolution of their whole attitude towards life, right? Towards other people and towards the universe around them. That there's an absolute certainty that their Creator exists and has entered into their lives in such a way that is miraculous to them, right? No burning bushes, no booming voices from the sky, just an absolute difference in the way they approach their daily lives and the way they experience them.
And most of us are hoping, before we actually had to do the steps, that we could create this change without doing the work. Anybody? I said to myself, Self, what do you think? I think I got this. Right? Let me share. Well, based on what? What have you done? I've gone to meetings and I feel different. I've read page 417. I surrendered. I got accepted. But you haven't done this course of action to bring about this change. So what will have to happen for you to get your attention again?
Relapse.
Another relapse, or to continue through this to have the step one experience as they're outlining here.
They go on to make this really important statement. If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we're at the bottom of page 25. If you were as seriously alcoholic as we were, and we know what they mean by that now, right? That we have that understanding of that malady that centers in the mind that places us beyond human aid. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives.
So this is interesting. An alternative is not a choice. An alternative is the result of something. Right? As the result of this alternative. Right? It's not a choice. Right? That means I need to do this course of action to experience what they're talking about. As the result of this course of action, I get to experience it. Does that kind of make sense? If I don't, then I go on to the bitter end, continuously relapsing and being beaten into a state of reasonableness. My life will continue to deteriorate, and I'll be baffled why I keep doing this, because two things. One, either you haven't done this course of action yet, and two, you don't understand the problem sufficient enough to launch you into grabbing the life preserver that's being presented to you, right?
And the reality is that some people will die. Right? Like, we're not talking about an illness that kind of just goes on and on and on until maybe you decide to, have another look at the two alternatives they're describing here. What we're talking about is a fatal illness. Given enough space and time, it will kill you, right? And that happens to a lot of people before they get an opportunity to understand these alternatives. Make sense?
So one was
to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could.
What step is that? Step one, because nothing changes. You can have all the surrender and all the acceptance and all the nothing changes the predicament of step one, right? We need to engage in a course of action to change the outcome of the fate or the road that we're on. Because we're aware of something that we realize has been happening for a while. The people around us get to see it, right? How many people had tried to do an intervention or talk to you? And how many people thought they had the problem? I need to find more understanding people. Where's Joanne drinking? Right? We find more people who are like us, right? You don't say nothing about me, I don't say nothing about you, we get along fine. Right? You mention anything to me, we stop hanging out. Right? Anybody? And whatever happened last night was last night.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
The other, to accept spiritual help. Which step is that?
Yeah, well, two is the outlay. Remember when Bill was sitting talking to Abby? He seen that this thing was possible. It was only a matter of being willing, that he might build what he saw in his friend, right? Which is step two, the solution being offered. Then based on that, he made a decision to go through the course of action. Does that kind of make sense? Okay.
We go into a certain American businessman.
So now, a lot of people, this story, what we're going to look at in the story being presented here is somebody who's obsessed with the idea of keeping themselves sober. Somebody who admits they have a problem, but they haven't done step one yet. A lot of people think step one is admitting you have a problem. We're going to see the difference between conceding to your innermost self that you are afflicted with this illness and what that feels like compared to having a problem. So this is 90% of the people in AA, right? And right until they have the step one experience. Right? So let's see this guy's story. So we're going to look at a person who suffers from the malady and don't believe they have it, and how they're obsessed with fixing themselves so they don't relapse again. Does that kind of make sense?
How many of you here have been to treatment? How many of you have been to treatment more than once? How many of you have spent money that you don't have trying to solve this problem? You'll find this story very interesting.
Yeah, methamphetamine is not the solution to alcohol. Sorry. Okay.
A certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and high character. For years, he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrists. Then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of a celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Jung. And for those of you that don't know, Dr. Jung was a very famous psychotherapist. He's one of the founding doctors of modern psychotherapy. So the ability for him to be able to fly to Europe and go and sit in this guy's office was a privilege and opportunity that most people did not have, right? So if you want to see the best psychotherapist anywhere in the world, you're sitting in Dr. Jung's office at this point in time in history.
So his human condition, right? He's able to treat that. He's doing well, right, in his life. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Who prescribed for him? Though experience had made him skeptical, he finished his treatment with unusual confidence. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable.
So that's like most people in AA. When they talk like they're never going to relapse again.
That's most people walking out of treatment, right? Like walking out of a treatment facility, you feel like you've just been through a process, that something has changed, right? You've done all of this work, right? Now you start going to meetings. You're a new person in Alcoholics Anonymous. Everything's great. You're going for coffee with sober people, right? No problem. What happens to him? Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. We call this a 1 month chip, a 2 month chip, a 3 month chip, maybe even up to 6 months, you're grabbing a chip. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time.
So has this person had a step one experience yet? Do they admit they have a problem? But not a problem that they can't fix. Right? So you hear a lot of people talk about step one, and then they talk about everything they're doing to fix it. right?
Now we're going to treatment centers.
I'm doing well. That's the same. Like you don't know if you don't know what the illness is. All that stuff makes sense. I'll just go to meetings. There's a reason why I keep because I'm not going to right meetings. I haven't got acceptance. You think it's a behavioral thing, and that's the way we're addressing. Because what's the first obsession? Self-fixing self.
We
Yes.
just read that, right? Like beating the game. As long as I get all of the right circumstances all in a row, the right ingredients where I need them to be, is any of this sounding familiar? Then everything will be fine and I won't need to drink and I will decide not to drink, right?
So the malady came back. He was without defense against that drink after everything he'd done. He's baffled, right? He's baffled because just prior to that, relapse was unthinkable. Like, how many people have been there? I'm never doing it again. Uh-oh.
Here he says, more baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. He's getting a little closer, right? He's not even really applying any kind of a reason or alibi or excuse to it now. He's just a bit baffled. So he returned to this doctor, whom he admired, and probably said, I gave you all this money. What gives, man? Right?
I want a refund.
And asked him point blank why he could not recover. He wished above all things to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems. Yet he had no control whatever over alcohol.
See, they make very specific. This illness of alcohol is not the same thing as the human component. There's something else happening here. We like to say it's the same thing. I wake up every day with untreated alcoholism. I'm working on my alcoholism. We hear people say that all the time. Well, they would have made reference to that, right? He tried to work on his alcoholism. But it's different. He's working on his human condition. He's feeling good about that. He thinks relapse is unthinkable because he doesn't understand the illness. Now he's talking to the doctor like, what gives? Right? Now the doctor's going to help him with the step one experience.
He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless.
What made him hopeless? But what do we call it? What made him hopeless beyond human aid? The malady, right? So now we're seeing what that looks like, and he's kind of stunned by it because did he think he suffered from this thing earlier? But now he's finding out from the doctor, you seem to suffer from this thing, right?
In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. He could never regain his position in society. And he would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was a great physician's opinion. But this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on this earth where other free men may go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude.
Kid of spiritual tools, like the doctor has been sold on the ideas in this thing. Regardless, through a course of action, right, he's able to have this daily reprieve. That's what it boils down to, right?
He says some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help.
How many were hoping? So it should say some of our alcoholic readers are hoping they could still be their own solution, right? And do it their way. Burger King sobriety. Drive through. I'll have a bit of acceptance today with a side order of letting go. Right? Right.
Let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor. The doctor said, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic.
Okay, what makes him have the mind of a chronic alcoholic?
Malady not being able to bring.
The malady. See how it revisits? So now they call it of a chronic alcoholic. Why is he chronic? Because he's having an experience that he doesn't want to have. He's drinking against his own will. He thought he'd never do it again. He's doing it. So you have this condition of the mind. You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic, means a repeat offender. Yes? So remember when Bill went to treatment for the third time, what was the doctor's opinion about Bill as he was coming back to his facility? He come to regard this type of as the type of hopeless. And that was after the second time going to treatment. So basically after you're drinking after the second or third time against your own will, anybody here? You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. Does that give you a warm, fuzzy feeling? Because we already know your fate. You either come to terms with that you're going to continue to relapse and die an alcoholic death, or accept spiritual help.
He says, I've never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent that it does in you. Imagine you have this man's resources. You can just get on a plane or a ship or whatever, however he got there, and go to an entirely different country and go and see the guy that nobody else has access to get a diagnosis like this. You're fucked, and I can't help you.
It's like I had a friend say, how much money you want? Just enough where I don't need God anymore. So that's where he's at, right? Like he could throw money at it, right? I've met people with more money than manageable, than I could imagine, like sitting on their yachts. When they have a problem, they can say, how much?
Yeah.
How much is it going to take? Or they go buy a new car, get a new girlfriend, buy a new watch. They always making themselves chasing the human condition, right? Which makes them feel better. But as long as this malady is present, they keep on relapsing, and it's baffling, right?
Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. Sounds like a step one experience.
That's step one experience. If you're feeling good about step one, you haven't done step one. If you still think you can manage this thing, you haven't done step one. If you're feeling like this guy, oh my God, I'm in deep shit. That's step one.
He said to the doctor, is there no exception? Yes, replied the doctor. Oh, great, a loophole. I love loopholes. You guys like loophole? Yeah, we like loopholes. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences.
Now watch this, right? Remember, our great obsession is to fix ourselves, yes? To come up with our own solution, our own understanding. That's where I don't get this. Like somebody's brand new, they haven't even done step one yet. They said, choose your own conception. You're already gone. Choose your own conception of God. It says that later after we present the solution to you. Choose your own conception, meaning your own understanding of a game plan sufficient enough for you to move forward through this. Remember with Bill, right? It was only a matter of being willing to believe that there was a power greater than himself. So he was able to redefine how he looked at this thing, have the collective experience of the understanding, get access to this power through a course of action, right? So his religious teaching could be regardless. So this is interesting where we go with this. Watch this.
To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. In fact, I have been trying to produce such emotional rearrangement within you. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful.
This is the same like Dr. Silkworth's facility. This is a different doctor.
But I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description.
And that's the same with Dr. Silkworth, right? He called these people beyond human aid, right? Or he called them a type I've come to regard as hopeless, right? And here he's reiterating the same thing. People of this type, right? We're different than other people. Like we're just something different. So they've all gotten together and discussed this, what makes us different than other people, and they describe it as the malady, right? And they're giving examples of that. And what's really cool here is Dr. Silkworth witnessed this phenomenon, this psychic change in people. And is that right? He welcomed this movement within his facility. This guy has heard about it. He's been trying to rearrange it. Like, see the two different experiences? Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, but he reflected that after all, he was a good church member.
Back to self again.
This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctors telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, in his case, they did not spell the necessary vital spiritual experience.
Oh my God, back to step one again.
But it also reiterates here for amplification to see Appendix 2 again, right? Like they want you to go into the appendix and read what it is they mean by spiritual experience. There's two ideas being presented here in this paragraph, which I find interesting. When they start to introduce us to the idea that you can understand these things in theory and you can have an experience with them. And those are two totally different things, right? Anybody read a book about a particular subject? right? And feel that you can take the action that the book is actually describing. But we don't have the experience of completing the task. All we've done is read a book about it, right? Make sense? To understand something in theory and to have an experience with it, two totally different things.
So we have two examples of people who had a belief system, who believed in something greater than themselves, but that belief and their experience with that at that time wasn't enough to create this change, right? Notice he didn't say, oh, you already believe, good, we'll go with that. No, he says, hey, it's not sufficient.
Yeah, and that is the word that he uses, right?
So he has to revisit something, right?
Telling him while his religious convictions were very good, in his case, they did not spell the necessary vital spiritual experience.
So, here was the terrible dilemma.
Here was the terrible dilemma in which our friend found himself when he had the extraordinary experience, which, as we have already told you, made him a free man. We're on page 28 now. We in our turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. What seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or, if you prefer, a design for living that really works. The distinguished American psychologist William James, in his book Varieties of Religious Experience, indicates a multitude of ways in which men have discovered God. We have no desire to convince anyone that there is only one way by which faith can be acquired. If what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of a living creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms, as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. Those having religious affiliations will find here nothing disturbing to their beliefs or ceremonies. There is no friction among us over such matters. It's interesting when we get to this point in the book, like if we're coming at it from the way we agreed at the beginning of the workshop, that we're going to set aside everything that we think we know, everything we've ever heard, right? And we're only going to have an experience with the book through the workshop, right? It's like, wow, wouldn't it be really handy if somebody designed a program that allowed anybody to have a spiritual experience? Weird.
All inclusive, not exclusive.
Yeah.
That's why the wording's very important, how they outline this book, where it's inclusive. So what's really interesting here is like this. This is the way my sponsor kind of explained it to me. If we all started talking about our ideas of relationships and we had people from all over the world sitting at the table here, right? All different religious sectors, all different representations, all different kind of, and they talked about ideal relationships. You think there'd start being an argument and a fight at the table?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Oh, yeah, especially, yeah, it would be like, like the Baptists would say, same-sex marriages and all this, like, oh, my God, gay people, like, get on and on and on, right? Sex out of marriage. It start becoming crazy, right? But if everybody talked about what the fundamental basis of a relationship was, would it be a different conversation at that table? Yeah, the basic principles of a relationship would be the same, regardless. Does that kind of make sense? So that's what this next sentence kind of covers that, right? It's so important because, say, as I came in as a true believer, but it wasn't working for me, and say Joanne came as an atheist, and I tried to, right? But this is important. And I tried, as sponsoring her, I tried to pass on my ideas. How you think I would hinder her development and work toward her demise? Or would I, if I went with what the book said, would she be able to find the same thing I'm experiencing?
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is where the next sentence comes in. It's so important, right? Where they talk about, as we understood him, the basic conversation of the we understood him part.
We think it no concern of ours what religious bodies our members identify themselves with as individuals. This should be an entirely personal affair, which each one decides for himself in the light of past associations or his present choice. Not all of us join religious bodies, But most of us favor such memberships.
So what's that saying in a nice way is, what you believe is none of our business. It's none of our business, your affiliation, what you believe. So you hear people say, so when, and this is what they mean by that. So you hear some people say, I'm a Buddhist. It's none of our business that you're a Buddhist. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ. It's none of our business, right? The basis is, do you believe that there is something greater than you that if you pursue, you could have the same experience?
Are you willing to have a relationship with it? Right?
And so I could sit in any denomination, any church, and I'll be okay with it. Anyone. Except when they start passing their doctrine on to me, right, then there's a problem. But if I was sitting no matter, like I remember when I tried to get sober, I got sober through one of these times through the Baptist church. And we'd go look for people of the Nazarene church to go argue with them, how they were wrong. Like that was the big pastime. Let's go find people to argue with how they're wrong. Right? Anybody?
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witness come to the door. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Fastest way to get them to stop coming is answering the nude. No, just no. But the idea is some people try to impose their ideas and their doctrine instead of, hey, where do we both agree? And they don't like that idea, right? Because somebody's got to be wrong. So if you're always starting not a conversation, you're wrong. Not going there, but where could we meet on the basis of the simple idea of the collective understanding? What's the collective understanding? That there is a power greater than ourselves, that we could get access through a course of action to allow us to have this spiritual experience, this psychic change.
Some of it is not always combative, right? We don't want to make too complicated terms of having access to this relationship, right? And although you may not have difficulty with somebody's specific religious ideas, what classifies you as a part of that religion might be too much, right? Too far out of reach, right? We're going to read later on about morals and better convictions and all that kind of stuff. And these are too complicated a thing for us to apply, right? It's too far out of reach for us. We don't want to make complicated conditions out of a relationship with something greater than ourselves. It has to be just a matter of being willing to believe that it exists and we're willing to have a relationship with it.
See, a lot of people in step 2 start talking about their idea of God and their relationship with God. That is not step 2. But you would know that sitting in a meeting. And a lot of us struggle with our own ideas, not the ideas being presented. Because we need to know what's being presented in order to have a view on it. If you don't know what's being presented, then you're arguing with whose ideas? Your own. Right? And the same with Bill everywhere. You need to get past that to see what we're offering as a solution and see if it's palatable for you to move forward in it. And the basis is do you believe there's something greater than you? Okay. That's what the whole basis is, isn't it? Wow. So my idea, like without realizing it, when I got taken through this, I struggled for 11 years of the teaching that I got taught what it was to be a believer. And before I even started the steps, it was what an order. I can't go through with it. Because my idea, I got to get a haircut, right? Got to go to church again. No nookie out of marriage. No, right? No nothing.
Can't lie, got to make a living, only by legal avenues, right?
You hear? Yeah, I got to change. There's only one thing you got to do is change everything. Anybody ever hear that?
Yeah.
If I was capable of changing anything, I wouldn't even be here. It's one specific thing. I could be a nicer guy. It doesn't change the fact that I still have an alcoholic mind. I could become nicer, do all these classes, the feng shui, join the gym, burn incense.
Yeah, really easy to do when everything's going my way and everybody's doing what I want them to do, right?
Yeah.
Talk about how great I am based on me. We all do it. Come on. How many people have been to a meeting and talk about how great they're doing based on nothing? What have you done to get like that? Oh, just been to meetings. Talk to me. I've formulated this delusion Right? We create this scenario and we believe it and move into it. We start acting like this thing that we believe is sober.
We move into it. We pick out curtains.
Right? Greeting at the door. Well, some of us, they got me off of that real fast. And we just set up chairs for a while. You leave those poor people alone. Okay, so page 29. Go ahead. I'm waiting.
In the following chapter, there appears an explanation on alcoholism as we understand it.
As who understands it? Not us. Them.
Whenever they're saying we in this book, we're talking about our founding members, right? We're also talking about people, a group of people who are post this experience. So they're already at the destination. They're sharing their experience with you. You are not a part of the we if you're on this side of the experience. If you're still in the step one experience, you're not a part of the experience that they're talking about, right? So in the following chapter, there appears an explanation on alcoholism as we understand it, meaning them, right? Then a chapter addressed to the agnostic. Many who once were in this class are now among our members. Surprisingly enough, we find such convictions no great obstacle to a spiritual experience. Further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we recovered. These are followed by 42 personal experiences.
So further on are clear-cut instructions. Where do those instructions start?
So they've just explained to us that there's going to be a chapter on alcoholism as they understand it, and a chapter addressed to the agnostic. Then what happens? Then there's going to be some clear-cut instructions. So when do those clear-cut instructions begin? After we agnostics, right? Where are we at in the phase of this thing? We're on a fact-finding mission right now, right? We're receiving information. Are we having an experience? No. We're having an experience with the information being provided, but has anything shifted or changed?
No.
Have we followed any directions or put pen to paper or done anything at this point?
No.
No, we've just been terrorized about the facts about alcoholism, right? Is that enough to have created this entire psychic change, to have a different outlook on life, to approach people in a different manner, to see things differently? No.
But we think it is. We start sharing like there's change. I just did step 1. I just did step 2. I do step 3 every day. It's a nice way of saying you do nothing. My car's got a problem. I walk around it, do acceptance, get in it, turn the key, still got a problem. Then they tell me, you need to do this solution. I know what the solution is now. I know what it is. I get in the car, turn the key, still got a problem. Right? Step 3 is I need to make a decision to get the solution to this problem fixed. Yes, it has to go through a course of action, and as the result of the course of action, I get to experience. So the confirmation of step 2 is step 12. The confirmation of step 1 is another drink. So further on, clear-cut instructions. So when I put my car into the shop, when did they start working on the solution? The moment I brought the car there? They had to go in the hoist. My car sat there for 3 days. If I went and picked it up, would I leave with the same problem?
Yes.
They have to go through a specific course of action. And as the result of that course of action, I get to enjoy one hell of a car on Monday.
Each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language and from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God. These give a fair cross-section of our membership and clear-cut idea of what has actually happened in their lives.
So would every one of them sound the same? Think about it. How did they get this experience?
Yes, of course.
Through a course of action, right? This collective course of action, right? What was the change that happened? It was a psychic change in spiritual experience. Every one of them experienced it. When we read the spiritual appendix in the back of the book, they said all our members have tapped into an inner resource. Not some of them, all of them. So if we all have the same problem, we all understand the same solution, and we all take the same course of action, will we all experience the same thing? And at different level, we'll explain it a little differently. Like back when I was going through, I called it a frequency. Today I'm okay with God, but back then it was like a frequency, tuning in the radio. I was a little, but I mean, but it made sense to me.
It made sense to me. What are you trying to say?
You're my kind of people.
Yeah.
When I'm having a rough day, I phone you, and I'm just doing okay. So I remember back when I was, 7 years? What are you, 9?
9.5.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I remember back then. Damn. But back then, it was great stuff, right? I wouldn't want to relive it, right?
We hope no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by fully disclosing ourselves and our problems that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. I must have this thing.
So now we're going to get into the fun part, right? More about alcoholism. More about alcoholism. What do you think this chapter is about? More about alcoholism.
Does this kind of indicate to us that perhaps maybe we don't yet have a full scope of what they mean by alcoholism yet? They've only just kind of given us the doctor's opinion, helped us understand what happens to us at a physical level, right, with the allergy. He says the only solution we have to offer to prevent that from happening is entire abstinence, right? And then we go into a bit of information about why entire abstinence is a problem, right? Is there something that centers in our mind? But they haven't really elaborated on it, right? It's just that something centers in our mind that prevents that right thinking around that first drink. And at certain times we are unable to bring in with sufficient force the guilt, shame, and remorse of what happened a week, a month, a year ago.
Yeah, so we're like that guy who's done everything to try to fix ourselves, and it hasn't worked, right? And then we sit in a meeting, find out, oh, now I know why. Self-knowledge. And there's a solution. Now I'm feeling better. Right? They said, whoa. We know the audience we're working with. You've started thinking. So we better really get into this, more about alcoholism. So if they're going to talk more about alcoholism, what are they going to talk about specifically? Which is the what? Allergy. So that's the first symptom they're going to talk more about, right? And the second symptom would be the malady, right? And so they start the introduction to that is most
of us have been unwilling. Weird. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics.
And what's a real alcoholic? Yeah, somebody who's beyond human aid. Because what's our first obsession? Of rising from our lethargy, exerting our self-will. Yes? And relapse is unthinkable. You're feeling good about step one all of a sudden again. And how well you're doing with you. So you're not like a drowning man looking for a life preserver, right? The only person looking for a life preserver in a pool is the person that can't swim. Right? If you could swim, you know where the life jackets are? No, not really. I know where the edge of the pool is. Right? But if you're out in the middle of the ocean and your situation is you know you're going to die because you're not becoming buoyant anymore and you know it's just a matter of time before you're hooped, right? And somebody offers you a life preserver, are you going to argue with the color of it? Like, are you going to grab that like because you know? So if you're in the middle of the ocean and you have acceptance, what are you accepting? You're going to die. So acceptance around step one doesn't seem to work, does it? So if you surrender to the idea that you're in the middle of the ocean and you're not going to last long, you surrender to that idea, what are you surrendering to? You're going to die. Right? But if you look at your situation and realize what's going to get me out of this is either somebody pull me out of the water or a life jacket, that means longevity. Does that kind of make sense? That's like step 1 and 2, two different positions, right? So here we go.
No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows.
How many symptoms?
bodily, mentally.
Have they talked about the spiritual malady once in describing alcoholism?
No.
Not
Mentally.
once.
It says mentally.
Okay, I'll say that again. Have they mentioned the spiritual malady once as being our problem? I know how we hear things, but that's right? So they haven't, have they? So that's not an idea represented in Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous as the association of what alcoholism is, right? How many people has heard that though?
Yep.
We hear it all the time. A threefold illness, but it's not supported by us. Either comes from treatment or somewhere, but it's not from us. Go ahead.
Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. Why? It's a really interesting way to understand how to read the book through this chapter, right? The statement I just read is directly related to the statement previous to it, right? No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people.
Has this person done step one yet?
Has this person had this step one experience yet?
Do they think maybe they might have a problem if they're still trying to control their drinking? They meant they have a problem, but something they could fix, right?
The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker.
So what's the great obsession?
That you'll be able to
Control and enjoy your drinking. So people who are still obsessed with the idea, right, are not even at the step one period. They know they have a problem, but not a problem that they can't fix.
Remember, we're talking about a person who doesn't want to think that he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. This is a person who's not even in the same zip code as a step one experience, right? The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics.
Who's making that statement?
first time.
They did. They learned, right? That they fully had to concede. You got to look at the wording, concede. So look up what that word means this week, concede, right? And then they're going to take us through the process that they went through to concede this. So from here to page 33 talks about the allergy. And then from 33 on, talk about the malady.
Say that again, sorry.
From here on, it talks about the allergy.
Page 30, 31, 32, and 33 are about the allergy.
And they give examples of that. Then they switch the conversation into the malady and look at the words they use to describe this thing that happens in the mind. And then this week, look at how they describe this thing that happens, how they explain the malady. So look through it and look for the examples they give on explaining this condition of the mind. Right? And collectively, what do they call this thing? I'll give you a hint. It's on page 37. How they describe it's the best description in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous in regards to the malady. It's on page 37. Does that sound cool?
There are 3 words to look up this week in a dictionary, a decent dictionary if you have one. Admit.
Sorry, what'd you say?
3 words to look up in the dictionary. Admit, concede, surrender.
What's a dictionary?
Learn the differences between those words.
Not a thesaurus. A dictionary. Right? And we have a 7th edition. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. And we'll close with serenity prayer for those who wish. What do we need for a good meeting? Good life. God. Grant me the serenity
to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Live long and prosperous.